Hi, everybody, and welcome to week 7. This week, we're going to be talking about principles of instructional design, or some additional specific ways that you can design learning events. So far in the course, you've been getting an idea of the librarian's role in the current school landscape. You've been learning about learning theories and what they have to say about what the brain is doing as learning occurs. And you've been exposed to some models and suggestions of ways to organize your learning events. 2 weeks ago, you worked on your model analysis, where you were able to look at 3 major models of inquiry learning, and you were able to dissect how these models improve learning in an inquiry event. For the last 2 weeks, you've been delving more deeply into the model of guided inquiry, which we will use for our final assessment or project for this course. With guided inquiry, you've been able to explore all the different ways that you could put together your guided inquiry teams, how to connect with your learners in each phase of guided inquiry, and you have begun to plan some specific instruction for your assignment 2, which is your instructional video, as well as come up with some potential ideas for the focus of your guided inquiry unit, which is assignment 3. And now this week, we're going to look at some more principles of instructional design. All of this is helping to work through our course goals of building and strengthening your instructional capital and capabilities as a learning experience designer. This week, we will have 5 topics, and included in these are 4 different principles or models of instruction, and we'll end with one caveat to be mindful of the work we are putting on our students' working memory. Now, each of the topics that we'll explore this week could be an entire unit on its own. Our goal here is for you to become familiar enough to be able to apply these concepts to a school library context. You can think of these as way to design the instruction that you will be included in your guided inquiry units. First, you will learn about Robert Gagne's 9 events of learning. If you look at this list, starting with gain attention, it should look pretty familiar because Gagne's 9 events have been used by teachers for a long time as a way to move through a learning event, beginning with grabbing kids' attention and informing learners of their objectives, stimulating their prior knowledge, and then working through various strategies for presenting new information, providing activities, and hopefully ending with ways that we help our learners retain the information and transfer it to the next learning event. You will then learn about M. David Merrill's Principles of Instruction. A professor emeritus at Utah University, Merrill looked at lots of different models of instructional design and lots of different theories of learning. And through these, he found that there are 5 basic principles that must be in place for learning to happen. Merrill says that learning is promoted when, first of all, the task is a real world or authentic task of learning. Then we activate prior knowledge, we demonstrate the new knowledge to the learner, we help them apply the new knowledge, and then eventually, when this knowledge is transferred, it becomes integrated into the learner's ability to continue to perform these authentic tasks. Then we will look at a generic model of instructional design called ADDIE. ADDIE has been used for instructional design of learning and training programs for everything from the military to corporate learning to K-12 education. ADDIE provides a macro process for creating designs where the designer works through these phases. Starting with analyzing the learner's needs, the designer then works through designing and putting together the instruction, developing it, then putting it into practice, and then evaluating how the whole system went. So when you look at the stages of ADDIE, analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate, you can see that it is indeed sort of a macro model of how to put design together, or instructional design together. Then we'll move to UBD, Understanding by Design. Those of you already working in a K-12 environment are probably familiar with UBD, because UBD is a way that we can put together our instruction that meets objectives for learning. It starts with the actual goals or objectives of the learning. So that's very similar to the ADDIE model, where you analyze what your learners' needs are. So these two are very, very similar. And then Understanding by Design looks at what assessments would be needed to measure if the goals are met, and then what activities and strategies would need to be used to prepare learners to perform the activities and assessments. And then finally, how are you going to provide the content? Now, for people who are used to older traditional models of learning and teaching, usually teachers would begin with the content and then figure the rest out. And that's why UBD is often nicknamed backward design, because we really start with the goals of instruction and then figure out the content at the end. Make sense? And finally, our last little caveat to our instructional designs is taking a look at Australian John Sweller's theory of cognitive load. Sweller's research looked at factors that affect the effectiveness of our instructional designs, and he developed a theory of cognitive load to discuss the stresses that are put on a learner's working memory as they learn. There are three kinds of cognitive load. First, there's intrinsic. This is the basic load that's imposed by the task itself. In other words, any job that we have to do is going to have a certain level of intrinsic cognitive load. In other words, it will take a specific part of our working memory. You can't really reduce this type of cognitive load, but you can help to manage it. Then there's germane cognitive load. This is the one that we want to increase if we can, because this is the amount of working memory that's devoted to processing and constructing new knowledge. We really want to try to target this type of cognitive load. And finally, there's extraneous cognitive load. And this is the load on our memory that's imposed by the instruction. And our goal is to minimize this extraneous cognitive load. While many teachers ignore cognitive load, or perhaps are even unaware of this concept, it really does play a huge role in learning. So, I hope you'll enjoy your readings this week and participation in the discussions, and I'll look forward to seeing you all in the course.